Hello everyone. Welcome to another video where we talk about horse, but this time I'm talking about horse with someone else. Petal, who has their own YouTube channel. He actually does quite a bit of G5 reviews himself. Say hello, Petal.
Hello, I'm super excited to be here. I love your channel. My channel is mostly G5 content. There are also some videos from G4 as well as G1 and G3. I'm kind of all over. I just love ponies.
I also love G3. We should talk about that some other time.
Ooh.
It's great though. So today we're here to talk about Hitch. We also did a video on Petal's channel where we talked about Pip. But we're talking about Hitch today because I love Hitch and I want to talk about Hitch. So I have some questions prepared here for Petal. How do you think Hitch has changed between A New Generation and Make Your Mark and Tell Your Tale?
Oh, well, this is an interesting question. I feel like he's one that's changed a lot. A New Generation Hitch, to me, is still my favorite Hitch. His character arc of kind of turning from a skeptic to on board with Pony Unity was very well handled. And I really loved that he was a charismatic leader in the community, but also flawed. And of course, deeply, profoundly kind. That's, in my opinion, the driving force of his whole character. Whereas Tell Your Tale, actually in the beginning he was still pretty good. The voice actor changed, and with that, the portrayal changed a little bit. He was kind of more energetic, he sounded younger to me, maybe even a little goofy, but still very charismatic and competent. He was really good at his job in early Tell Your Tale episodes, like, for example, Fool Me Once. He was portrayed as being good, a good cop. That's kind of changed as Tell Your Tale has progressed, I think, especially once Sparky was introduced. Most of his character is focused around flailing around, attempting to take care of Sparky. And Make Your Mark, ever since the first special, he's been a joke. I mean, he's not good at his job at all in Make Your Mark. No pony really takes him seriously. And they have maintained some of his same weaknesses from the movie, that he was skeptical about change. But they've kind of blown it out of proportion, especially with, what's it called? Winter Wish Day? Yeah, it was the same flaw, but he was never so insanely set in his ways like he was in Winter Wish Day. So they've kind of changed him, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do actually agree with quite a bit of what you said, and I do want to say about Hitch in A New Generation, I think you hit the nail on the head with the way kindness is like the core of his character. It influences every behavior we see from him, including his flaws. Like, the reason he values order and fears change so much is explicitly because he cares so much about ponies and worries for them and wants what's best for them. Every scene he has in that movie teaches you something about who he is. I love the dialogue he has with Sunny, where he pulls her aside and is like, listen, you can't keep doing this. Not because he just loves law for the sake of law, but he's like, Sunny, you're gonna lose your friends. And what ultimately convinces him to join Sunny in her crusade is that he genuinely believes that what Sunny's doing will help ponies. You know, he thinks that's what's right. And if you follow that line of logic, every action his character takes makes sense, and it gives so much more depth to his flaws. I agree with you completely about that. In the first chapter of Make Your Mark, I was so crushed, I'm not gonna lie, because I felt like they really did him dirty. All of his competence, he was so competent in the movie, he was humorful but in believable ways, but in the first chapter of Make Your Mark, he was a complete joke. They erased his character. He's no longer competent. He's no longer a good leader. He had no idea how to tell a bunch of foals to calm down, let alone handle a serious crisis. But in the movie, we were led to believe he absolutely would have had that handled. I don't know. That was a disaster. And I agree with what you said about Winter Wish Day as well. I think that Chapter 2 did bring back some good in him. I really liked Growing Pains because even though it could have been paced slower to make his struggle more relatable, I think the core of his character being about kindness and the way you can worry so much for others that you take their freedoms. I think that there were good things to be said there.
Yeah, I mostly agree with you. Certainly, the weaknesses that defined his character, which all connect to his kindness, they haven't gotten rid of that. They haven't gotten rid of the core of his character, but they've just kind of changed the emphasis.
Yeah, he's much goofier, and as a result, for some reason, that means he's less competent.
Yeah.
But so next up, we might have already discussed this at length, but are there any more you have to say about the strengths or flaws of his character that you didn't get to say already?
Yeah, I did want to mention. No, I think we covered it all actually.
Yeah, I thought so too. I guess we're just really passionate about talking about Hitch, so it just sort of snowballed into that.
Yeah.
So, in regards to like G5, like G4, is kind of a show about. Let's not say kind of. It's definitely a show about teaching kids morals. A New Generation was very, very forward about that. Tell Your Tale is sometimes rather forward about that. Make Your Mark Chapter 2, absolutely. Is there anything about the way they did Hitch that you feel was a positive or negative portrayal for the lessons they were trying to teach in Make Your Mark or Tell Your Tale?
One lesson that I think didn't work super well was, we already mentioned this episode, Growing Pains. Actually, Hitch's story was fine by itself. Him, trying to control ponies and stop magic from happening because he was scared of it, that was fine. And in fact, because magic had proved itself to be quite dangerous, I think he was in the right for most of the episode until he got carried away at the end. But
yeah, agreed.
Combine that with Izzy's story going on with Sparky in parallel, where basically she finds that the best way to take care of Sparky is to just throw out all the rules. And the episode kind of is aiming towards anarchy. Never really showed what rules are good for, which, they are good for something.
Yeah, absolutely. It does paint the overall moral in kind of a negative light because of the additional context of the Sparky subplot, where they're like, never mind rules at all. Just do whatever, which is very dangerous, especially when you're trying to communicate to children.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest criticism I had about the way he's portrayed insofar as the morals they went with. I do think the job swap episode was a bit confused in its morality, because they felt the need to introduce magic, and I think that might have muddled like the overall point of swapping jobs to see what it's like in the other person's horseshoes. Like it obfuscates it a bit, but that's less to do with his character so much as I don't really understand why they did that.
Yeah. That one was, I wasn't sure exactly what the magic was trying to do. They didn't even stick with one interpretation of it.
Yeah, that episode was just a shame, because I was glad to see more Hitch, and Hitch and Sunny should really talk more. But
yeah, they're childhood friends. Where is this relationship?
It was so good in A New Generation. Felt so warm, like they really did know each other for years.
Yeah.
Lastly, this is a common talking point around Hitch in particular, as it was in G4. Do you think that Hitch's gender as a boy or stallion, or whatever you'd like to call him, has anything to do with him getting goofier and goofier over time?
This is an interesting question, and this is one I had to give quite a bit of thought. And the answer, to me, is no, not really. There are other characters that they've also failed to portray to the vision of what I might have hoped, such as Izzy in Tell Your Tale, or Pip in A New Generation. I think they just got sidetracked. But it is important that he is a stallion, because I think that means that their failure to portray him in a more positive way has heavier consequences, because he is the only stallion that regularly shows up in the show. And part of what made him so great in A New Generation is that he did what the main six did, but for masculine traits. So some of the main six characters had stereotypically feminine traits mixed in with the rest of their character in a way that added to them rather than just subtracting or defining them. And Hitch had the same thing. He had the masculine confidence and charisma, and even masculine stubbornness, but it wasn't the only or even the defining point of his character. Kindness was. And ultimately, it's not that I don't think they're deliberately making him dumber because he's a stallion, but it kind of makes it more egregious that they are making him dumber because he's the only stallion.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I do agree that they're not making him dumber on purpose because he's a boy. Like, when you compare what he goes through and how he's portrayed to every other character, everybody else gets it just as bad. They act just as goofy. They get just as much slapstick. They're just as silly. But I do agree that it feels a bit awkward and counter to the purpose of A New Generation's portrayal of him. As you said, because in A New Generation he was a whole character, and it showed that there are ways to be traditionally masculine without being aggressive or mean. And he's such a caring and strong-hearted individual in that film. It's just a shame to see it go back to the default goofiness. Like, regardless of whether that's the intention of the authors, it is unfortunate. I agree with you.
Wow. Yeah, I'm glad we can agree on that point. I could see why some people would be upset about this and think that maybe they're doing it on purpose. I don't think they're that malicious. They just didn't think it through.
Yeah, it's always better to assume ignorance. I just don't think there's enough evidence that they'd be doing it on purpose. But that's all I really had written down, and this was really good. We got some good discussion out of this, and I'm happy you came along. Yeah,
thank you for having me. I'm super excited to see this on your channel, to see what and I'm super excited to see what other videos you have in store for us subscribers.
Honestly, I do need to go back and watch your G3 content now that I know that you review G3 stuff as well. But thank you for coming. I loved having you. You were great. Is there anything you want to say before we sign off?
Just keep loving ponies. It's the best thing for everyone.
It would be the best for everyone's health if you all keep loving ponies. You heard it here first.
Yep.
All right. I'll talk to you all soon.